Appreciate that.
Okay, we're live. We are live. Scott, welcome, Scott Britton. Welcome to Charlotte Dunes Lagoon. Thank you for coming. I am so excited to talk about your new book because I absolutely loved it. People send me books all the time, and sometimes I'm hesitant, but yours I read and I was like, wow, this is really good. This is a lot better than I expected it to be. No offense, but there's
I'll
so
take
many
it.
there's there's so many self-help books out there. There's so many books about consciousness, but I really feel that yours is exceptionally well written. I loved the personal stories that you put in it, and I am so excited to talk about it. I don't know if you brought a copy of the paperback to show us, because
Right,
yes,
right
such an
on the desk.
accomplishment. Because my first question is going to be, what is the one thing that you would really like a reader to take away from the book? And what is one thing for people tuning in right now that you'd really like to get across to them? And why should they stick around and listen to this conversation?
Oh, wow. A lot of heat right in the beginning here. I think it's really simple. Like the thing I want people to take away from the book is that you can work on expanding your consciousness where in a rapid way, wherever you are, whatever your job is, whatever your circumstances, like it's all about your relationship with life. And so I know for myself, a part of the reason for writing the book is when I had my journey begin, I was running a company. I was like the antithesis of spirituality, right? And I was like, if I really want to go for this, like, am I going to be able to do that while my life looks the way it is? And I eventually learned, yeah, you can. You can work on your consciousness in a very genuine, earnest, and a rapid way wherever you are. You just need to have the right perspective.
Right. And I have to say, as I was reading the beginning of your book, you really are a high achiever. You have quite an interesting background from graduating from Princeton, being an Ivy League football team captain, working at a startup that I think sold for 100 million, and then doing your own like venture capital rounds and raising 20 million for your own company. So I think you know what you're talking about when you say that you weren't coming from a spiritual background and that you had to kind of, well, I think I shouldn't explain your story. I'll let you explain your story. But I just think this is another reason that people need to listen up because you know what you're talking about. You've lived through this kind of transformation yourself.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, look, I think like a lot of people, like I bought into the like, if you're successful, life will be freaking great, right? And make a lot of money, achieve a lot, have the relationships, have the cool apartment, like all the things, right? And so, that was the game that I played for the first 30 years of my life. And eventually kind of recognized that I was pretty miserable. And it was really confusing actually and pretty annoying, right? Because you're like, wait, but I did everything right. Like I did all the things that society told me was going to make me feel good. And eventually I just realized through some peak experiences and through meeting a teacher that like there is a more direct way to work on feeling good for an increasingly large portion of your life. And that's the consciousness journey. That's the healing journey. That's understanding all the things that make you experience life the way that you do. And once I recognized that, like that was the game that I was interested in playing, but there was this whole experience that I think a lot of people have where it's like, well, how the hell do you do that when you need to have a job? You need to have, it's like I have a kid, like, I have bills, like I have responsibilities. And so I can't just go F off and go become a yogi or something or like a monk. And so, yeah, I think just, our modern times call for us to find integrated ways to work on our lives from the inside out. where we don't have to give everything up. We don't have to quit our jobs. We don't have to do anything radical, right? We just have to start to focus on how we're relating to life. And, we can talk about the freedom log and what that was, but that was a big tool for me.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far. I don't want to jump too far ahead since I've read the book and the people listening have probably not read the book. But if you could talk about, what was your goal with this work and what is it really about? Because I don't want to summarize, but I do think it's combining two areas that people are kind of allergic to having combined, which is, personal development, personal achievement, and spirituality.
Yeah, well, I think, what I think the book really answers three questions. And so the first is, having been someone that was like firmly planted in achievement world and success mountain climbing and all that, and then realizing, wait a second, maybe it's actually spirituality and consciousness and inner work that is going to create the meaning and fulfillment I want in my life. Um, is like, is it possible to pursue spiritual development, to pursue the evolution of your consciousness, dare I say enlightenment, and at the same time make shit happen in the world? Like, is that possible? And I didn't know, right? 7 years ago when my journey got really serious. And so, spoiler alert, the answer is yes. And I'm living proof of it. And, we talk about how to do that in the book. And that's really the second question is like, okay, cool. I'm on board that that's a potentiality. How do you actually do that? Right. And so I outline very specific ways that you can start to turn your entire life into a spiritual practice for greater awareness, for greater understanding, for greater emotional well being. And then the flip side, which also doesn't get talked about in our society, and honestly, I think is like kind of there's like an allergy to in spiritual land is okay, cool. If I do work on my consciousness and there is an expansion of that, well, how does that actually impact my capacity to create in the world and to achieve things? And I think like we've lived in this kind of like compartmentalized world where it's like you choose one or the other, right? And they aren't related. And that just hasn't been my experience. And so I think for like people out there that like, no, like I actually want to have like a successful life. I want to have a good job. I want to have a good, all that kind of stuff. And I also want to understand like what the hell is this reality that we're living in? And why am I the way that I am? And how do I feel that connection to the divine? Like you can have both. And they can actually support each other in a really enriching and enlivening way. So anybody that's curious about that, those two intersections, like that's kind of really who it's for.
Yeah, I noticed that as I was reading your story that, you were very focused on achievement. You were very hard on yourself. You were in a deep grind set mentality, like the stereotypical kind of tech entrepreneur. And I don't know if your company Troops was like a super techy company. Maybe you can talk about that too. But you definitely had that. I was imagining you as this extremely neurotic, extremely driven, hardworking, but like just super self-critical young man who was miserable despite having achieved what people looking in on you probably thought was a dream. And then people have no sympathy for that whatsoever because they're like, you shouldn't be unhappy. You're living the dream. And so you can't even talk about it. And then it becomes like a deeper cycle of self-loathing because you're like, I can't even voice that I'm feeling bad because people think I should be feeling good. That's the impression I was getting reading your story. And it made me wonder more about your background and your parents and like, was all of this internally motivated? Did you have like family pressure to be like this? Do you think it was genetic? Like, where do you think your
Yeah.
this drive came from?
Well, I definitely think there were some things that happened to me as a kid that um, basically made me have low self-esteem. There was bullying. Um, I mean, I think I just like saw some things like from my mom, who basically was like never loved by her parents. like unconditionally. And and so I think like, you don't really recognize these things as a young kid. You just know that you have this like fire in your belly to be the best at everything. And there's a story that often goes along with that where it's just like, for me, it was like, oh, well, I like achieving because, yeah, like if I'm going to do something, I want to be the best. And like, I like winning. And I think the reality is it was like, when I started to do the inner work and really when life, um, basically made it, like I went through chronic illness for a couple years and I'm still dealing with that, by the way. But like, I couldn't do anything. Like I couldn't be productive, couldn't work out, like couldn't do a day of work. Like and I basically felt worthless without the capacity to get anything done. And that was like a recognition and awareness started to build around like where that was all coming from. Where that hard charging was coming from. Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like when you don't have unconditional love, you do things to try to get it, whether you know it or not.
100%. Do you want to be more specific on the illness? Just because I think people like to relate to specificity.
Well, this isn't going to be a popular thing, but essentially, ever since I got the COVID vaccine, my health went to complete shit.
Oh,
Um,
no.
I basically never was sick, never had any issues, was at peak health, got vaccinated, um, and I experienced laryngitis after that for 7 months. It got to the point where I couldn't talk. I started to get chronic fatigue. I started to have just pain all in my body, which I still have. I still have pain like every minute of every day in my neck and back. Um, and yeah, since then, like I've dealt with brain fog, I've dealt with numbness, just all kinds of things. And there was a good 2 years, like I'm functional now, but like my health has never been remotely close to what it was. And that was an incredibly difficult thing because here, like here I was just doing what the world told me to do. And I lost my health. And I had to forgive my mom, who was the one who made me get it. And that was a huge spiritual, emotional thing of how can I how can I love unconditionally even when I feel like this is unfair? And that's really only something that I've been able to get to in the past year.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That's awful. And it sounds very emotionally complicated as well. And then in your book, you write about kind of having this like two wake up calls, sort of. And I don't know when this coincided with the chronic illness beginning, but there was the joyous barista and then your psychedelic experience. And then I guess also kind of meeting these other healers along the way. But did the chronic, was the unhappiness with like the grind set and the hedonic treadmill, did that come before the chronic illness or was it all at the same time? And then do you want to
Yeah,
talk
there
about what snapped you into this transformational consciousness journey?
yeah, so I think, from a timeline perspective, um, right before my 30th birthday, I basically recognized my own unhappiness. And I just was it's kind of been one of those things where like uh you look around and you just realize like I don't laugh like people do. Like I don't like I'm not like free and boisterous, right? Like I'm kind of like controlled and like man, I got so intense. And so I was in a Starbucks one day in New York City getting my coffee before New York, and this woman is just like laughing her ass off. And I'm like, it just hit me. I was like, wow, like I never laugh like that anymore. And I didn't put this in the book, but one of the other things that was like kind of in this like recognition of my strategy not working was my mom saying to me, like, you used to be such a goofball in high school. Like, what happened to you? And I was like, holy shit, she's right. And I was like, here I am, having done everything right, having had all these achievements, right? And yet, like, I literally just made the Forbes 30 under 30 list, you know, like, I would like, and then like, I'm not joyous. And so that was what would opened me up to psychedelics because I had done therapy. I'd been meditating for 6 years daily. Like I had done the things that people say you should do if you are still unhappy. And in that psychedelic experience, it was my true first altered state of consciousness. And that was where like I realized, I mean, I basically had a divine connection with what I would call my true self, but I just was given, you know, answers to all my questions about what reality is. And I mean, that was like, holy shit, you know, like, who are my parents? Why am I here? What is religion? Like, just all of the stuff, right? Like, what is my purpose on earth? And coming out of that, I was just like, whoa, like, there's a whole lot more to reality than I thought. And then I basically kind of redirected a lot of my ambition towards exploring that. So those were two big inflection points for sure. And about a year into that is when I met my teacher. And that was the next big inflection point.
Before we get to the teacher, can you kind of paint more of a picture of that psychedelic experience? What did you take? What was the set and setting? And then what was like the entity like that came to you as you remember it?
Yeah, so it was a two night ayahuasca journey. Um, and it was in an Airbnb outside of New York City. And yeah, basically, I mean, the first night I felt like it was
Like,
very somatic.
were you scared to go? Were you excited? Like, how did you even decide to do this?
I mean, I was at the end of my rope, you know, I was kind of like, fuck, like I have tried all these things and it's not working. I was in a relationship with a girl that I was on and off with for years and, you know, didn't know whether I should break up with her. And I was like, maybe this will help me get clarity. Right. And I'm someone that's kind of like shoots from the hip. Like there's people that like, before they do ayahuasca or something, they'll read every article and they'll listen to 20 podcasts and they'll do the research and this and that. And like for better or for worse, you know, as I've learned with my vaccine injury, I tend to not do that. I tend to just kind of go and just trust. I'm an incredibly trusting person, and that's like a very positive thing, and also brings some complexities. And so, yeah, I had a friend that was like organizing a retreat. I trusted him. He had worked with this person before. I had a couple other friends that were joining. And so I wasn't very nervous. Honestly, I was like, I've been meditating for 6 years. I'm prepared. Like, I kind of can navigate my mind. And I mean, I had nothing but positive things in that experience. And there was a lot of things that happened, but you know, there was a connection with a sense of feeling what I would call the cosmic heart, where I was like truly in like enraptured in unconditional love for the first time, and I was like, whoa, this is freaking amazing. I've never felt what this feels like. And I remember seeing like a big, it felt looked like a big heart, like psychedelic colory thing, and it was just like even just seeing it, I was like, whoa. And then, yeah, there was a distinct moment where there was a presence in my awareness that wasn't my thoughts. But, you know, I just kind of knew that this was like, this was God, you know? And I was just like, hey, And it was like you could ask whatever you want. I was like, okay, so why am I here? And like, and there was like basically clarity. It's like I'm actually your there was a sense at one point in the thing that was like the ayahuasca was like, I'm your mother, and like Earth is your mother. And I was like, okay, well then who are my parents? And and then I'm like, okay, so, and it was telling me like, you've lived a lot of lives, you'll come back for more, and I was like, holy shit, like that's great news, because I was so in the mode of like, I got to make the most out of this one shot that I have, right? That I was like, wow, so like I could just kind of just do whatever and it's not a big deal and I'll just come back. Like, that's great. Um, and so, there was just such a relief after that experience. And we can definitely talk more about it. But one of the things that came out of that was like, okay, I touched a part of myself in my inner world that was more compelling than anything I'd ever experienced. And I wanted to find a way to basically have that be my full time experience. Like I wanted to be connected like that to the divine, really. And that became my core motivation.
Sounds like an amazing experience. And I guess it kind of made you believe in reincarnation. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd heard about that experience. I'd heard about reincarnation, and I was like, yeah, that's a cool idea. But then when I was told that I've lived many lives and I'll live many more, I was like, whoa, okay. Um, and there was just an understanding, there was just a knowing that everything I was hearing was true. Like there was no doubt about what I was experiencing. It was just like, yeah, this is true. I just knew it. And since that point in time, I've experienced many things in my awareness that are clearly not from this lifetime, like tons of experiences as a woman, as a child, as a this, as a that, as some things that didn't happen to me in this lifetime. And that has strengthened my conviction in reincarnation.
I share that conviction as well. And I do feel like it's an extremely comforting, like more relaxed state to be in than thinking this is your one life and this is your parents' one life and this is it. And I'm also a fan of
Totally.
the rounds of rebirth idea. It just resonates with me, whether it's jumping into different dimensions or being reborn in this one. I don't know, but yeah, I feel like there's a multiplicity of possibilities out there for the future. You are getting kind of unstable. I'm seeing your connection waver. And I want everyone to be able to
No,
hear you. I don't know if we should try to adjust something.
I
Oh,
just
you're
I just
so
wanted to get my phone charged, so I was thing. You good now? You hear me okay?
okay. Yeah, I can hear you okay. You are getting like a little pixelated again, but we're just going to carry on and hope that it improves. Um, and so, okay, so this, and you do talk about a lot of other synchronicities. I don't know if I want to call them synchronicities, but other kind of magical, spiritual, synchronous experiences in the book. But I want to,
Can you
uh,
do can you do one
yeah, I'll give you one
uh,
second.
something plugged in here?
While,
That
while you're doing that, I'll show people the
thing.
cover of the book again. Whoops. There's the book.
Cool. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, conscious
Yeah, sorry.
accomplishment. No, go ahead. Yeah. How to use personal achievement for spiritual growth by Scott Britton, who we're talking to right now. For those of us, for those of you just joining us, which I also really liked how the book has these kind of breakaway sections at the end of the chapters, or at least my version did. I thought that was a nice touch where you can kind of have some like prompts for the reader and for some things to. for some things for people to do on their own, kind of. And I liked the illustrations in the book as well.
Thank you. Sorry, I just had to
But
get the phone charger here. We should be good now.
yeah, no, the live stream really drains the battery. I want to hear also about how, because you're, I don't know if I want to call it your spiritual teacher, but you're the woman that you were working with. I think her name was Carol, right? Was it Carol?
Yep.
Yeah, Carol. That's my mother's name, by the way.
Nice.
I'm talking about lots of mom stuff. Um, I want to hear about how you found her and all the realizations and practices that she helped you come to, which I think some of them you were doing already, like the meditation, but how did you find her? What was her actual training? Because it's you're so blessed to have found this person that, really helped you in this way, I think. And I know probably a lot of people listening would love to find someone like this.
Yeah, totally. So, I found Carol through a coworker. She was positioned to me as like an advisor, for like basically my VP of sales was I was telling him about some of the things I was going through. He's like, I talk to this woman every so often who's like a kind of advisor to me, and you should talk to her. I was like, okay. I don't know what that means, but I was pretty desperate to get some clarity. And yeah, basically, from that first conversation, she was just very upfront with me about just like what she does. She's like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "Well, I want this and this." And she's like, "Oh,
Wait,
you
wait,
think
what did
you?"
you tell her that you wanted?
I wanted my company to be successful, and I wanted a girlfriend. I wanted to find my partner. And I was just, in New York City, just dating around, getting tired of that life. And yeah, she's like, "Oh, you think something outside of yourself is going to solve your happiness issue?" And she kind of like thought that was like, "That's cute." Like she kind of like made me feel like an idiot. And I was like, "Shit, like I think she's right." And you know, she basically alluded to the fact that I could have unconditional well-being regardless of what was happening around me. And that was very interesting to me, enough to start working with her. And I could talk a little bit about her training, but she basically had been
Or can you give us
studying.
also like a picture of her? Was she older? Was she, what
Yeah,
was she?
she's a 74-year-old woman who lives in Washington State.
Okay.
And she has like I think she had reddish hair with pink highlights in it at the time. And so like not the typical person I was chilling with. And yet, her she was so vibrant, right? Like her way of speaking and her appearance had a youthfulness and so direct too. Like I was used to people just kind of like beating around the bush, not wanting to ruffle any feathers, and she was just like, "So, what do you want?" And I was like, what do you mean?" And she just got right into it. And I'm like, wow, like this person has like no holdbacks. And similarly, like the way she like laughed and just like, I was like, this person's just like free. And I want some of that. And yeah, so that was a little bit about her. And we still work together. I still talk to her every other week. It's been about 6 years together. And she's incredible. I'm incredibly grateful for her. And they say like, oh, the teacher appears when the student is ready, right? And so
Hmm.
like I wasn't seeking a spiritual teacher. I just wanted help. But what I can say is like I had reached a point where I was like, I'm all in. Like I am all in on consciousness. And so that's where I was at. And then a teacher came, and so like I don't know if that's how it works with everybody, but that's how it worked with me. And And like her background is spent 30 years studying different traditions, everything from, I mean, I know she's done transcendental meditation, she's done Hoponopono, she's done, I think, self-realization fellowship, like all these different yoga, like all these different things. And in the past 10 years, she's been focused on Ren Shui, which is a Taoist, Qigong oriented lineage that I've been spending the majority of my studies on. Um,
Hmm.
and so that was like a whole new thing for me, uh, that has been incredible. And that's what she mainly teaches now.
When it sounds like she helped you get the things that you wanted, because I'm guessing you do now have a partner and your company was successful. So, what was that process like?
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing about this kind of consciousness spiritual thing is like, you know, I only got some of those things after I was really kind of put through the ringer. So, with the company stuff, uh, I had a series of experiences where I thought we were going to like sell our company many times. And every time something would happen at the last minute and it was like, wouldn't happen. And I would get really distraught. And, I would try to use those opportunities to kind of see like, okay, like accepting what's happening. And, but like, I really, really wanted my company to have an exit. And yeah, the last time, I think we had three botched attempts. The last time we had something, we had literally signed an offer, there was press around it. The business we ended up selling to was Salesforce. Um, and like, right up until the end, there was like some big thing that was like going to blow up the whole thing. And I was like, I can't fucking believe this. And, I truly, truly, truly surrendered. I was like really got to the point where I was like, I don't even care what happens anymore. Like like whatever you want to do here, universe, it's fine by me. And I really meant it. And when I got to that point, things shifted. And, you know, 2 weeks later, we had sold the company. And, and basically it was like I went through this like year and a half plus roller coaster to basically teach me how to fully surrender. And, with my wife, I now have a daughter with, it was kind of similar, right? Where I had just gotten to the point of true acceptance and even felt like some days I'm like, maybe I will just be single forever. Okay. You know what? If that's what it's going to be, so be it. And then lo and behold, and when I had reached a certain level of acceptance, she literally came to my house through a small before a concert unexpectedly with a friend and like on my doorstep. And we were married. We were basically married like a year later. And so I think like there's a lot of lessons through that, but generally life seems to have a curriculum to teach you lessons and to like I believe that we live in a beautiful universe where the divine wants us to have everything. It like wants us to have a beautiful life experience. But it also, at the soul level, recognizes that what we really want is our growth and evolution and specific things that we might have came into a lifetime for. And so the pattern that I've experienced is like it tends to like give you these lessons, and as you kind of like learn whatever you're supposed to learn or grow in whatever way you're supposed to, then oftentimes that thing that you were seeking when you're no longer attached to it and you got the lesson, like it'll come.
So, then do you believe in a predetermined fate or destiny for each person?
I don't know. To be honest, I do believe there's some level of predetermination, like whether that's like, I mean, I've had people on my podcast who are like, every single thing down to the thought you have is predetermined, right? And then other people who are like, well, you have like a general kind of thing that you chose, right? With your parents and like what you're getting into. And then like there's like some free will along the way that you can kind of like go here, here, here a little bit. Where I net out is like I find it more empowering to feel like I chose a lot of things, especially the hard things in my life. Um, because otherwise it feels like it's easy to be live in victimhood, where I'm like, oh, cool, like lost my health for 4 or 5 years. My dad committed suicide, like so many things. And for me, it just to be like, what, my soul chose this for its evolution is like a much more empowering thing than being like, wow, like I got really fucked.
Wow. So you would even say that you believe in free will before birth?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that, well, I'm not really sure how that would work, but I believe that like we
Like that your
chose,
soul chose it?
yeah, like our soul, yeah, yeah. I believe that our souls essentially choose a particular incarnation, um, first to experience certain things and fulfill a certain mission.
I always am curious where people fall on the free will spectrum because I myself am also still trying to see where I fall on that spectrum. So I like to hear people's takes on it. And I'm sorry about your
Same.
father. My partner had the same experience with his father. It's very sad. Um, and then so as all this was happening, is this when you began the freedom log practice? And maybe tell us about the freedom log. I absolutely loved reading it. I was like, I need to start my freedom log today.
Yeah. So that practice was started about 6 years ago, I want to say. And basically, early into my relationship with my teacher, before, like right after we met, like in the first 3 meetings, call it, she was like, your problem is not all the shit you think it is. Your problem is your way of relating to everything, your reactions. And I want you to just start to notice every time you're taken out of a calm, natural state, because your natural essence is that. Like your natural essence is in love with life. It's accepting of reality as it is. So if you are able to notice the moments when you're not like that, that's an indication of what parts of your consciousness need to be brought into awareness and healed. And so I was being the optimizer that I am and the type A achievement dude. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to put a note on my phone and I'm going to check out, I'm going to write down every time I'm disturbed so I don't miss any opportunities. And, that actually was incredibly useful. Like, I was like, first off, holy crap, like I'm triggered all the time, and when you're not really paying attention to it and treating it like you're trying to become a student of that, it's just whatever, right? It's like, oh yeah, like annoyance, annoyance, like whatever. Like, but like, when I'm like pulling out my phone like 5 to 10 times a day and I'm like, I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to have these little things just like bother me. Um, and yet that was what was happening. And so it became an incredibly useful tool for self-awareness. And then when I would bring those experiences into transformational practice, which is basically saying, okay, you have this external manifestation, like, you call customer service and you're on the hold a long time and you're annoyed. Like, okay, well, why are you annoyed? You bring that into a practice that goes inward, and beneath that, I was starting to discover like the core fundamental beliefs or imprints or um, concepts that were driving that reaction. And that was like, whoa, okay, this is like looking at my own source code. This is crazy. And that practice is still something I do today. I do it. Um, I still do it where I'm still observing these things and trying to understand why am I reacting that way.
And what made you call it a freedom log instead of like an annoyance diary or like something else? Where did the freedom log part come from?
Yeah. Well, I think it's this idea that like we are inherently free. Like we are, like true freedom is basically our ability to experience reality as it is, no matter what happens, and feel incredible, right? To me, like that is the true freedom. That is like the freedom that like our divine nature would experience. And so when we are moving through the world and something like derails us, or like we look at something that's not ideal and we're annoyed by that, like that, can you see how like your state is getting jerked around by the outside world? And to me, that's not the deepest form of freedom. And so uh the name is really to kind of, we're aspiring towards that state, and we're using these opportunities that come up as a way to see what's obstructing it.
And could you walk me through like the process of how you kind of bring that unconscious to the conscious level? So like let's say, yeah, it's the customer service lady that's annoying you, and then you kind of what would be like the progression of your thoughts from there?
Yeah, so um you know, in the beginning I wasn't really working with these things real time. I was, what I would do is like, okay, have this annoyance. I write it down on a little note on my phone, like customer service annoyance, put a thing. And then the next morning, usually I would take out that note, and I would sit down in a meditative practice, and I would bring that situation into my mind, and I would shift from thinking into feeling. And sometimes I would even say like, I'm annoyed at customer service, right? And then I'm kind of shifting my inner awareness to what's happening in my body and opening to what's there. And at that point, I would start to, there would be information that floods into my awareness. Or like maybe for that it would be like this is unfair, like this is bullshit, or like um this is a waste of my time, right? And so these like concepts would come up, and eventually at one point, sometimes it would happen rapidly, like now it happens pretty instant, but there'd be a clear like thought form that was like the core underlying pattern of what was causing me to feel that way. Like I'm running out of time. There's this idea that I'm running out of time, and my fear of running out of time is causing me to be annoyed when my time is wasted.
Mm.
And so you're opening, you're okay, wow, okay, I found it. I found like the core thing. I'm opening and I'm accepting that that's there. And that process of acceptance and being with it allows you to transform it. It's like that has to be witnessed in order to transform. And at that point, I would try to bring, I was instructed to basically bring in an open heart quality. So it's like, okay, instead of this like fear around running out of time, what if I just allow myself to just have trust for the timing of everything is perfect? And can I feel that? And so I would do this with all of these things. You know, I'm talking, I mean, I've done this thousands of times at this point, maybe tens of thousands. And I started to notice like, whoa, okay, that things that were bothering me aren't bothering me anymore. Like I noticed the change in my own way of being. And that's what got me hooked to all this. Was like, wow, like I'm not the same. My experience is not the same. And so I would just do that
Yeah.
every day.
And the meditation practice that you were doing was just to like sit in stillness and clear your mind? Or were you using mantras or just to try to focus on the
This is
different
this is this is
instruments?
this is before. So before this, I was just using like kind of just standard. I mean, I did everything from just standard concentration to vipassana to guided meditations. But this practice was very specific about taking this external manifestation and going into it and exploring it and then transforming it. And so, like, that was most of what I did. I wasn't doing like just like focus on my breath or focus on sensations, or I was like kind of going in precisely with these intentions of exploring the subconscious and then transforming it.
which I think is a practice you don't hear very much about. Like, I don't hear people talking about this very much in, when they talk about mindfulness and meditation, it's usually not so targeted. So I found that really interesting. And I loved what you wrote about trust and all your realizations around true reality, trust, trusting the universe. If you want to elaborate on you also have come up
Yeah.
with a lot of new words. You've got a lot of new words in the book, which I love. Love when people make up their own language to go with their metaphysics, or I don't know how much of that was Carol's language, but you got a lot of concepts in the book.
Thanks. Yeah, there's some coinage, some coining some things, and there's definitely some things that my teacher communicated in a certain way. Um, yeah, I think trust is like so underrated, right? I think what's really popular in spiritual land is like surrender, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, just surrender and accept. And to me, um, that's really hard to do if there isn't a trust, an inherent trust in your system, an inherent trust that everything is going to be okay. And so I was taught that we can basically like build a trust muscle is like one way to think about it, where it's like we have this ball of concepts that is our consciousness that's informed by everything that we've ever experienced and maybe even lifetimes before. And we can think of that as like just information. We can think of it as information existing as energy. And we can go, as we interact with that through that exercise that I mentioned, we can change the quality of it. We can say, okay, doubt, like packet of doubt information and energy, we're going to experience you. And then we're going to instruct you using our consciousness or using our true self. We can do both to feel trusting instead in this moment. Not like an intellectual act of deciding, but in this moment, can you feel what it would feel like to be completely trusting of reality as it is? And as we do that, we're changing the composition of our consciousness. And so, yeah, what I realized was like a lot of my disturbances, like a lot of the things that were like taking me out of peace is because I didn't have trust. It was like anxiety around money, anxiety around not being in a relationship, anxiety around how am I going to pay my bills, like social anxiety, like just like, whoa, like I am not trusting. And I was taught that, there's this concept of the energetic heart and that humans can reach a state where the heart is completely open. And in order to do that, there has to be like sufficient trust in the system because so much of our closedness to reality is because we're not in a state of trust and we're living in fear. And so I just kind of just spent a year just focused on that, just trying to notice every time I wasn't trusting. And very subtle too. It got more subtle over time, right? It's like in the beginning, it's like, okay, maybe I feel a little anxiety before a big meeting, or maybe I feel anxiety when I look at my bank account. But then it was like, it just got more and more subtle where it was like, whoa, I noticed that I won't speak up. Like, I don't trust my own words, like just like things that are just like very subtle, right? And so I was just became a student of all of that in my own mind and body. And again, I noticed reaching a point where I was like, whoa, I actually can live in uncertainty and be okay. Not know what was going to happen in any part of my life and be okay. And that was like, holy shit, like This is a lot more freedom than I had before.
How did you cultivate that trust? Because I think that's a big leap for people to make.
It's using the same exact method that I described earlier, where you notice you're not trusting. Okay. So something comes up, some manifestation in your life is like indicative you're not trusting. And I give a whole list of them in the book. It's like second guessing, anxiety, or like trying to control stuff. I mean, there's so many ways it can show up. And then it's like, cool, okay, I'm gonna go into that and I'm gonna feel that. Wow, can I feel what that feels like? That like anxiety or that second guessing and like open to that. And a lot of times, like, you'll just feel waves, right? And it's like, can I accept that that's there? Okay, cool. I can accept that I'm not trusting about something. All right, what would I like to replace that with? And can I allow myself in this moment, not deciding to trust that all my financial woes will be better, but in this moment, can I allow myself to feel a sense of trust that I'm provided for, or whatever it is that taken care of, right? And allow yourself to feel that. And what you're actually doing when you do that is you're changing the energetic composition of your consciousness. You're changing this like vault of information and energy that you have. So if it was 99% not trusting and 1% trusting, you do that. Okay, now it's 1.5% trusting and 98.5%, right? And you just keep working it. And yeah, and then eventually it's like, whoa, I'm just a trusting person, you know? It's like, cool. And so I'm simplifying it, but that's the idea.
Oh, it's like a trust fund from the universe with compounding interest. How exciting.
Oh, I like what you did there. That was a
No, I
good
think
one.
that's so amazing. I mean, it's such a great idea. One of the many great ideas in this book that you've written. Um, because, yeah, I think a lot of people don't have a lot of trust in the universe, especially these days where there's a lot of apocalyptic thinking and doom and gloom going on. But I'm imagining that also you must have had anxiety or some distrust in even kind of talking about this journey publicly and like starting a podcast, writing a book. I mean, going from a founder, a business person, an Ivy League graduate to talking very openly. I think some people would consider this very woo woo. I know it's becoming more mainstream, I think, for people to talk about this stuff, but I'm sure you must have also had apprehension. And like, what made you decide to take this journey public? I guess is what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like, it got to the point. So I didn't talk a lot about this before my company had sold. Um, Mostly because I didn't have time, honestly.
Yeah.
Like maybe like there was like some hesitancy, but like it was also just like I was just like trying to make that happen. I wasn't like blogging and tweeting and all those things. And you know, but I had reached a point, like I was probably 4 years into my journey at that point, and I was like, this is where it's at. This is like what's up. Like people need to know about this. And I had such conviction in it because I had seen my own transformation and I had seen how it transformed my life and I had grown so much. So there just wasn't a shadow of a doubt in my mind that consciousness is like the biggest lever for the quality of your life. And also, in my opinion, why we're even here. And so, um, I had reached that breaking point, and really why I started to talk about it online is I wanted to find an opportunity in it. And so I was like, okay, I have no network in this. I've been like B2B SaaS sales software person, and I want to align my career to this because I had actually, I don't think it was helping, but I think like I was misaligned with what I was doing with my company at a certain point, and I stuck with it to try to sell it, and I think that didn't help my health. And so I was like, okay, lesson learned. I am getting in alignment. I'm doing something to support human consciousness. And so I was like, I need to build a network in this. I need to like be on the internet, and find the others. And so I was like, I'm going to start talking about it. And yeah, there was definitely like some anxiety around that like first blog post, right? I wrote this blog posts of like I had an email list at that point from like blogging like 7 years earlier. I barely sent anybody an email in 7 years. And then I wrote this post about my spiritual journey. And uh, it was like incredibly well received. There was like all these people like, dude, this is epic. And like, oh my gosh, I've been on a similar journey. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is kind of cool. And, you know, I kept talking about it. And here's what I've learned about this is like the people that, the people that aren't aligned with you, they're mostly not going to say anything. They're mostly just going to like not care. Right. And just like you won't hear from them. And then like the people that are going to be like emphatic, right? They're gonna be like, fuck yeah, like hell yeah. And so like you just polarize people that are in alignment and people that aren't. And yeah, I think and it just gave me when I realized that was kind of what was happening, I was like, wow, obviously I want to keep talking about this. Like this is amazing. And now I see that I see this as part of my mission here, is to share this stuff with a particular audience.
Yeah, and I guess that ties into the idea of conscious accomplishment, which I think some like people might see that word pairing and think that it's social entrepreneurship or like spiritual entrepreneurship. Um, is this what you mean by conscious accomplishment? That it's like accomplishing things that you're spiritually aligned with in a way?
No, no. So I think like we talked about this practice of like using every disturbance, triggering moment you notice your heart is closed as a way to start to examine and transform your consciousness. Um, there was a period of time where having been this like hyper ambitious type person, I was like, oh, that's like, like, that's like no bueno, right? If I want to keep growing spiritually, like I don't want to do all the things I used to do. And yet,
Hmm.
after a couple years of kind of being a little bit apathetic around like building and creating, I was like, I actually like kind of feel my life feels like incomplete. I wanted to just be dispassionate about my career and not making things happen in the world, but like highly spiritual. Like that doesn't really do it for me either. And what I realized is that actually I could use the process of moving towards whatever I was felt inspired by or moved to create as a pathway to start to like experience like all of these triggers and all of these things that then allowed me to transform. And so it was like actually the process of accomplishing things can be a process of spiritual growth. And
Hmm.
that was a very different narrative than the one that I started this journey on, which was that if I'm serious about this, then I need to go all in, kind of like I did on my startup. Like if I'm serious about this, I'm going to go meditate 8 hours a day, or I'm going to go move to a Zen monastery, or I'm going to do something radical like that. And then it was just like, no, actually, um, I can do all of the stuff that I feel inspired to do. That's looks more like business people things, and use all the opportunities that gives me for my evolution. And so I think the positioning of the title in the book is very oriented towards people who came from that historically ambitious way. They're trying to like understand like, well, where does that fit in? Like where if I'm doing the spiritual thing, if I really believe that my consciousness is what's up and this is like why I'm here and how I'm going to improve my life, like, well, what do I make sense with all that? And so it's like this is a new story that I'm trying to inject into the culture.
I love that. And I think it's truly a great book for people that have big dreams, but also want to cultivate their spirituality and the understanding of themselves and the universe and others. And if you had to encapsulate that story that you really want to tell, and also with the other projects that you're doing, maybe talk a little bit about the other projects. Um, how would you encapsulate that? And what is your wish for how they will be fully realized or fully received?
Yeah. So let me just like big picture this. Like,
Hmm.
I think the world is a lot of it is in a shit show right now. And I think it's because of the consciousness that has got us here, right? It's like our way of seeing, relating, reacting has created this entire circumstance. And so, yes, climate change, yes, do good, yes, all those things, but like from a fundamental perspective, it is the transformation of our own consciousness that will shift all of that. And so we need to basically find ways for a large percentage of people in the world to start to work on their consciousness, to start to work on having an open heart, start to work on loving themselves, start to work on healing their trauma, like all of these things. And yeah, my wish for the book is that for everyone who has a job, who has dreams, who has things they want to see happen, who wants to make money, who wants to have a nice house, like all of the things that our society has told us in the West, right? It's like, guess what? You can start to move towards all those things and you can work on your spiritual growth at the same time in a very robust and rapid way. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can do both. And guess what? By doing that, you're actually creating a huge gift to the world because this consciousness thing, it is the fundamental like ground that we are creating earth on, right? And even beyond earth, right? It's like it's everything. Um and so you don't have to choose, right? And in fact, actually like working on your consciousness is actually going to help all those other things. It might not look exactly like you thought it was as you go through that experience, but you're you're going to have a higher perspective, um, which will allow you to make more intelligent decisions and things that are more aligned. And so that's my hope for the book is that it just like supports those people out there that like want to kind of do that walking both worlds stance that I did, but that were like me, that were like, okay, like, yeah, this is, I want to do this, but like, I don't want to like give up all that other stuff. Like, guess what? You don't have to. And you know, what I am trying to do in the world with everything I'm creating. So, I have this book, I have this company called Conscious Talent, which is a recruiting firm for basically founders and entrepreneurs who are on a conscious journey who are like, hey, I want to be amongst people that kind of see the world in a similar way and are on this journey. We help companies with that by basically doing recruiting services. I have a community I started called Founder Satsang for entrepreneurs on a spiritual path. It's about a couple hundred people. It's like really like everything. And then I got to do the podcast and I write on the Substack. Like all of this stuff is like centered around this idea of helping integrate consciousness into the existing structures of Western life. And I tend to particularly play in the world of business and entrepreneurship because that's the world I came from. And so, I have a level of context there that allows me to understand the needs of people, but also be relatable, make this stuff relatable and accessible. Which was like a huge thing for me when I got started, where I'm like, everybody I see talking about consciousness is like an old white or Indian dude. Like, where's all the guys who are at the gym 5 days a week trying to like build companies and, you know, like watching football on Sundays? Like, no one, there was none of that. Right. And so, yeah, I just think we need across the spectrum. Like I'm one of a million blips of like people I hope that will be talking about this, where somebody can look and be like, oh wow, this stuff. Okay, yeah, I could get into this. Okay, this could I could use this to improve my life. So that's really my intention of what I'm trying to do, and how I'm trying to see the change that I want to see in the world, which starts with consciousness.
That's amazing. I love that. And by consciousness, do you mean like connection to source? Do you mean like a mindfulness? Like, can you parse that out for
Yeah.
people listening? Because they might be like, what consciousness?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a the word kind of sucks, because it's like, it can mean so many things. But I think the way that I would describe it is that people can start to work on their awareness and understanding of themselves and reality itself. And as a part of that, the relationship with a divinity, the relationship with God, the relationship with that which organizes and animates all of life, which we are a part of. And yeah, to me, it's all one thing actually. But consciousness is just a word that seems to be an easy people use to describe that.
Like a secular spirituality that's very open to everyone.
Yeah, yeah. Like I don't identify with any religion, you know, um, and I think we all have like a subjective experience. We all have the relationship with the world around us. We all have a sense of self, like who am I and what am I seeing? What am I experiencing and why am I showing up the way that I am? And, we all have a consciousness. So we could all work on that.
And for the recruiting agency and the membership, who are like the ideal people that or what's the exact kind of niche of entrepreneurs that are involved in that in case anybody listening is interested in
Yeah.
that?
I mean, so
Or is it like an invite only kind of thing? Like, how's that working?
yeah, so with conscious talent, it's I mean, we will work with anybody we see that we think we can help. We work with everybody from AI startups, Y Combinator companies. We have just finished a search, finishing a search to one of the top healers in the world, an intentional community in Costa Rica. Like it really runs the gamut, but tends to be more one of the a huge family office. So I mean, I guess we are doing like a wide range of industries, but our typical, most of our searches are for more tech forward companies because typically venture capital companies can pay for recruiting firms. Um, and On the founder satsang, that's like a community that most people don't even know about. I don't publish it. It's a referral based community, so you kind of have to be invited by somebody that's already in it, and it's the criteria for that are you're an entrepreneur, either current or former, and you're genuinely committed to your consciousness journey. And it's been an entirely organic thing. I've never talked about it really, or tried to get people to join it or anything like that. And people have just kind of come in through other people, which is how we, I guess, have like a high trust container. Um, so yeah, those are those things.
What do you do in the membership? Like, do you guys get together? Do you guys just like talk? Like, what do you guys do?
We sing Kumbaya.
I'm so curious.
No, so there's 3 retreats a year. Um, we have one in Austin at the end of the year, and those retreats are like community led programming. So instead of like having like outside facilitators and like it being like a consumer experience, it's a co-creative experience. So people come and they share their gifts. Uh and so like last one we had like 15 different people like do some type of like session of like teaching something or leading people through something or hosting a discussion. So it's really rich and really just like high intimacy experience. And then, there's like a lot of a lot of big text group with like a lot of subgroups. And so, there's lots of dialogue for there's a parents thing, and then there's a building something new thing, and AI consciousness thing. Like there's all these like subgroups that people aggregate around and just connect and often like connect offline about. And then we do monthly Zoom calls and guest speakers. So we've had people like Cyan Bannister, one of the top investors who's into consciousness, Brian Wetton, who is like one of my favorite coaches in the world, who was on my podcast. Like just different people come in and basically share their wisdom with the group.
Oh, that's awesome. And what does the name mean?
Satsang means a group of people in search of truth. So it's a
Oh,
Sanskrit word, and it's a word usually just describe like a group of spiritual aspirants that are in community together working on themselves.
when speaking of speakers and gurus, if I use that word, I'm always like a little hesitant to use that word. But another question I was going to ask you before we wrap up, because I know I've taken a lot of your time. Um, what besides Carol, who are the people that you are most influenced by, most admired? What also what books have been
Yeah.
transformative for you, or what books do you often recommend to people?
Yeah. So I would definitely say like some of the biggest people in my walk have been David Hawkins, um, Power versus Force, Maps of Consciousness. Like he was a real big influence of mine. Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment, Untethered Soul. Those were huge early on. The leader of Ren Shui, Yuanse, who lives in New Zealand and doesn't speak English. I probably consumed him more than anybody. He's like Carol's teacher. And there's some amazing content of him on their YouTube channel. Um, and he's got a book called Well-Being Begins with You that I think is very good. Um, and you know, honestly, like at this, like I also really like people that are blending the business stuff with consciousness. 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership by the Conscious Leadership Group is great. I think Joe Hudson's great. Um, and right now I'm reading a book that I'm pretty excited about that I'll plug, which is it's called An Everyone Culture: Building a Deliberately Developmental Organization. And the idea is like they don't explicitly say this, but like you can make the goal of a company to be everyone's personal evolution instead of just
Ooh.
profit. And so that's something that we're doing at Conscious Talent. And it's also something that I think we'll probably be working with companies to teach them how to do that. Um, so I'm
Oh,
kind of becoming a student of that. And also Autobiography of a Yogi. I love that book. Very
oh,
inspiring
classic.
and mystical. Yeah,
You froze for a second, but I think you're back.
I'm back.
You're back. You're back. Well, I love all the work that you're doing. I think this is incredible. And I also love the mix of business and spirituality myself. Um, is there anything else you want to say? I feel like I feel like we talked a lot about the beginning of the book because I do want people to go and read the whole book. So I don't want to like explain the whole entire book. But is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up about the book that we didn't really touch on or about your metaphysics within the book?
Yeah, so I'll do it a plug again. Here it is. You can find it on Amazon. The section 3 of the book I think is pretty cool, and it talks about uh how like the awareness journey and the unfolding of that actually helps you be like a more effective person in the world. And so it goes into things like practical ways that manifests, like your intuition coming online, right? Uh, the capacity to notice and remove limiting beliefs, what I call working with life's intelligence, which is kind of like learning how to interpret how reality is guiding you so that you can align to it. It's kind of like Taoism. And yeah, you just start to have all these skills come online and other capacities that I didn't get into because I didn't want to weird anybody out. But there's
You
like
should always weird them out.
I know. Well, I can weird out with you, Charlotte,
This
but
is a
like,
weird out space.
you know, there's just so much more humans are capable of. And it all starts with consciousness. And I just really would love if we started to look at human potential in a bigger way and recognize the connection to spirituality, consciousness, because like I said many times during this conversation, probably it's like people there's this narrative that you're either spiritual or you're effective. Like,
Mm.
you're a spiritual person, you're probably soft and you can't make shit happen in the world, and you know, you probably just meditate all day. And actually, I was talking to somebody today that says that they feel like that. And like, that's just, yes, that exists, but that's not all there is. And you can actually weave these things in a really amazing way. And for me, it's like, it's been a game changer for my ability to create in the world.
Yeah, I felt a lot of when I was wondering if you had read a lot of Eckhart Tolle. I also felt a lot of big magic in what you were writing. This like tapping into the intelligence of the universe and letting like the story that you told about having issues with your health and then feeling like all of a sudden you needed to like leave work to go outside and like walk and then you run into this like friend that gives you a person who helps with your health and how these like synchronicities just become magnified the further you get on this consciousness journey, which I also deeply believe myself. So just to say that people should go and read the book.
Magic is real. And
Magic is real.
here's the thing, it's like I just like who doesn't want more magic in their life? And it's like I actually feel a lot of deep compassion for a lot of my friends who are just so skeptical because, I've been that person and I know what creates a better quality of life, which is between being open to possibility and versus being skeptic. And I just think it's way more fun to just be open to possibility. And, you know, that seems to create the conditions for a lot more magic to occur.
Keep an open mind. Let that universe trust fund accumulate.
That's right. That's right. The Universe Trust Fund. We came up with a new term on this call.
Well, thank you so much for all of this. And Scott has a Substack. Go subscribe, read it, listen to the podcast, read the book, do all the things, make your freedom log.
Thank you so much for having me, Charlotte. I love what you're putting out in the world and I love your energy, and just you're just very grounded, warm person. And so I'm very grateful for you hosting me. And this was a really fun conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
All right. See you, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.